Bye. Now, let's just give some people time to come in. Yes, we're live now. Welcome, everybody. This is Simon. Today is quite of a fantastic day for me. I've been following Abdullah Samir for about a year and a half, and it's an honor to have him here. Welcome, Abdullah.
Thank you.
So I've been following you for about a year and a half, and yeah, the first time I found out about you was it when Ali Dawa, when you had a video when you challenged him? About a year and a half ago?
Yeah, that's a funny story. Actually, he challenged me. I wasn't challenging him. I wasn't going around saying, "Hey, I want to challenge people." It wasn't like that. It was more like, "You're a fake ex-Muslim. If you're a real ex-Muslim, you're gonna fly over here to UK, and we're gonna prove that you're a fake ex-Muslim." And I said, "Well, okay, I'm not gonna fly there, but I'm most willing to have a conversation with you online." And then when he realized that I actually know what I'm talking about, he blocked me, and he's like, "That's the end of it." Yeah.
So the spirit behind that video was I saw a lot of confidence, and you were willing to meet him intellectually. Your response was that, let's skip the small talk. Let's talk about what matters. Yeah. And that confidence is what I remember.
Oh, yes.
That video. So I want to let the audience feel you out a little bit. So I've prepared some quick question. It's either or, and you can say pass if you want. Horror movies or rap music?
Horror movies or rap music? Rap music.
Asra Nomani or Sam Harris?
Sam Harris. I don't know Asra Nomani actually. I've heard of her. That's about it. But I'm a Sam Harris fan. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Dubai or Bahamas?
Yeah, I wouldn't go to Dubai. My blog is blocked in United Arab Emirates. I might end up in some prison cell somewhere, rotting in some hole. So I actually feel a bit sad about that. I would have loved to go to see the Burj Khalifa and all that, but I just can't take risks like that. I have to go to Caribbean, Bahamas.
Yeah.
Plus, my parents have been there. My dad went there a couple times. He loves it there. So.
And it was fine for him.
Well, my dad is what you would call, he's an Ismaili. So I converted from Ismailism, which is a small sect in Islam. They are maybe 10 million in the world. They're very liberal. They don't pray 5 times a day. They have this living guide. So I converted from that sect to like Orthodox Sunni Islam. But he was fine, and he drinks. He's pretty much agnostic, Ismaili, you could say. He believed in God, but he didn't believe that much in the religion per se. So but he loved Bahamas, and he went to Hawaii. He loved that too. And they went to, my stepmom, who is Ismaili as well, went to Dubai multiple times. So they were fine. I think in general you're fine unless you're kind of speaking against Islam publicly, then you have a problem.
Beautiful. Next question. Rebel Media or Al Jazeera?
Again, I'm not from, like, I know of all Rebel Media. I haven't really looked into it. And I think that's Tommy Robinson's thing. I don't know too much about that. Al Jazeera obviously is a Qatari news outlet that has its own bias, right? So I don't really have anything to say about that. Those two, they're both biased, I think, in their own ways. Everyone has a bias, right? So
yeah, that's why I took those two. But and the last one here is Muslim Reform Movement versus ex-Muslim movement.
Well, I'm part of the ex-Muslim movement for sure. So if you asked me, like, I left Islam wholesale. I didn't try to reform Islam. I didn't try to, hold on to it or whatever. I just left it, right, completely. So I think that one is probably, it's tough because I do think that there needs to be a reform as well. And there's many people that are not like me, are not able to just let go of Islam. So like the reform movement is needed. We can talk about that in more detail. But ex-Muslim movement over the reform for sure.
Yeah. So welcome everybody. We want you to be interactive in this broadcast. So if you have any questions, just type @Taqiyya Watch live stream, and I'll see your question right away. So before we start, I'd like to ask you, what do you what do you think that or you want from me to feel heard and respected? What kind of things should we not do? What should we do? What is the boundaries?
Well, to be honest, like, it took me a while to decide whether I was going to come on your channel, and the reason for that is because, like, even your name, Taqiyya Watch, right? Like, we can talk about this. Like, Taqiyya is something that is actually thrown against Muslims, I feel, a lot more than it needs to be. Like, when I was a Muslim for 15 years, I believed in it with all my heart. I was like, I converted to it, like I told you, right? Like, from a totally different, what I consider a totally different religion. Ismailism was totally different. They don't read the Quran for the most part. They don't go for Hajj to Makkah. They don't pray 5 times a day. They pray 3 times a day. Totally different prayer. It's completely different. So I converted, and when I converted to Islam, I read the Quran in full. I read the Hadith books like Sahih Bukhari, you know, from cover to cover. The summarized one, like the 1 volume, not the 12 volumes.
Yeah.
And so the first time I heard this word taqiyya was when I went to my Shia uncle's house, and I was reading one of his books, Shia books. So it's more of a concept in Shiism, and I think the reason for that is because they were prosecuted and they had to hide their beliefs. But I don't know the whole historical story behind that. But like, as a nominal Muslim, or even as a conservative Muslim, like, you don't even know what that word means. Like, I never heard that word almost even once in 15 years. So I do feel like I was a little bit nervous because I don't know from what perspective you're coming from. And by all means, you can ask me whatever tough questions you want. I'm very happy to have this conversation. Obviously, we're going to have a disagreement, which is why I think this is going to be interesting. So I'm not expecting you to coddle me here in any way. Like, you can just be straightforward, be honest, tell me how you feel, and I'll do the same back to you. Like, I want this to be a very honest, very open discussion. So yeah, by all means, like, obviously I've interacted with you on Twitter, so I can see you are a respectful person. I don't, you know, I'm not expecting you to, like, insult me or anything, which is fine, right? I wasn't expecting that. So that's good. Let's do this. Let's talk about what we need to talk about.
Yeah, and I've also seen your manners, the way that you approach those that you those that you disagree with, and I really appreciate that. So I think this is a pretty good match. So for me, taqiyya, of course, if you go to scripture, you're gonna find it even from Sunni sources. If you go to Shafi school, if you go to the Islam Q&A, you will find it. But that was an intention with my name. These days, taqiyya has been something, as you said, it's something you throw in people's face. Something that's become more like a meme, something fun. And in this YouTube world, we are a couple of channels. We're probably like 30 channels that have found a community where we actually go into each other's channel. Half of them are Muslims. The other ones are 10% are probably Christians. And then we have Kemet from different kind of background. And we discuss and we disagree and we are befriending each other.
Okay. So can I just jump in for a second?
Please do.
So I'm just going to share my screen here. Islam QA, which is a Salafi Wahhabi website, which I use, it says here that this corrupt belief of taqiyya has nothing to do with the beliefs of Ahl Sunnah. So lying is one of the attributes of the hypocrite, right? So it's actually saying that, and here you can see they're using the word Rafidi, which is basically a slur for Shias, right? And they're saying that this is one of the basic principles of the religion, but this is something disgusting. This is a hypocrite. And this is basically wrong, right? So I'm not sure where you're saying that this is part of the, like, I haven't seen, like I said, as a Muslim, I've never heard that this is something that's part of the, as a Sunni Muslim, I've never heard that this is a part of the religion. And even Islam QA, which is a hardline Wahhabi website, is saying this is a disgusting thing that has nothing to do with the religion. They're saying we should be honest about a religion. And if you go to Islam QA, they're like open about, oh yeah, we would kill an apostate in Islamic State. You have to stone adulterers and homosexuals. And they're straightforward as you can get. Like they're the opposite of taqiyya. And you can see right there on the website that just by doing a quick search of taqiyya, they're like, no, it has nothing to do with us.
Well, I'm pretty glad that you actually have reference and you want to challenge me. I do welcome that. And you're actually talking to someone who can respond to these kind of things. So here is Islam Q&A from my perspective. Can you see it?
Yep. See?
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's describing here deception in different ways. Let me see if this is actually the right one. Let me see.
The one example I can think of is when you are compelled on fear of death, then you are allowed to lie and say I don't believe. So for example, the what used to happen back in the day is some of the Muslims were slaves, and they were like, they were told either you disbelieve in God, in Allah, let's say, or we will kill you and put you on the hot rocks and leave you in the sun to dry. So some of them used to say, okay, I disbelieve in Muhammad and I curse Muhammad. So this is the one example of like where you're allowed to lie. If someone's threatening to kill you under compulsion, and then basically you have to ask for forgiveness for what you said, but you're allowed to say that. I mean, that's the only example I can think of. Maybe this is what this is talking about.
Yeah,
this website
actually, if you want.
I'm sorry?
We can read it together if you want, the part that I highlighted.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
So this is fatwa number 27261. Speaking about basically that you have some sort of ambiguity, that you are going to mislead people. That's what we are referring to. You misleading people. You may know the answer, but you're not going to give the answer. So they're describing here that there are certain cases where you actually should avoid certain questions. I can read what it says if you want.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Is regarded as a legitimate solution for avoiding difficult situation that is the person may find himself in when someone asks him about something. So it's obviously saying here that if you have difficulties answering something, maybe don't give the right answer. Give them half truths, but you're not allowed to lie. That's what they're saying down here, right?
Yeah, this is a kind of funny thing in Islam where people will sometimes, like as a Muslim, they won't, like a good example, I think they even mentioned that on the website, is like there's questions on like, okay, so in Islam, if you ever have sex, you have to take a shower. And let's say, for example, and before you can pray again. So let's say, for example, you're at someone else's house and you slept with your wife, but you don't want everyone to know, right? So I think what they're trying to say is if someone asks you, like, you don't have to like answer them straight up. You can kind of be like dishonest and say, oh, my clothes are dirty or something like that. I can't pray right now. But I haven't heard this used in the context of deceiving people about the faith. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I'll show you a more proper reference. Then we'll have this out of the window.
Okay.
This is the same Islam Q&A.
Okay.
So
yeah.
It'll be bigger so people can see themselves.
Yep.
So this, one of the scholars, Al-Nawawi, said that scholar said that if I have double sound in my ear, so I'll just lower it for a second. If that is needed to serve some legitimate Sharia interest that outweighs the concerns about misleading the person to whom you're speaking, or if it is needed for a reason that cannot be achieved without lying, then there is nothing wrong with using deliberate ambiguity as an acceptable alternative.
So again, it's pretty general. And I think what they're trying to say is because lying is absolutely forbidden in Islam, they're trying to say that you don't have to be totally honest in every single thing you say. You can just kind of like be vague about it. So for example of this is mentioned in one of the hadith where Ibrahim had a wife, and one of the evil kings, Nimrud or someone, said, who is this woman, right? Like he wanted to sleep with her, but Ibrahim didn't want to say, Abraham in the Islamic story didn't want to say this is my wife because he would have been killed. So he said, this is my sister. He lied, right? And he said, this is my sister, but technically he meant this is my sister in Islam. She's my Muslim sister, but it's a lie, but it's not quite a lie, right? And so it's kind of like this half truth that they're saying. So because there's such an emphasis on lying is so bad, I think they're trying to say that in some cases, if it's, it serves as religious, like what the website is saying, it's not appropriate to do it a great deal, so it becomes a habit, or to use it to gain something wrongfully, or to deprive someone of his rights. So Islam QA is saying, like, you can do it, but don't make this a habit, and don't do it in order to cheat people or to gain something that you're not supposed to gain. So they're saying, like, for awkwardness and whatever, like, there's some situations, right? So I'm telling you is what I understood as a Muslim, not necessarily what it's possible that there might be some like hardcore, maybe somebody somewhere would say it's okay to lie, to mislead the kuffar.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so thinking about that a little bit more, there are people who would say that, and this to me was a problem even as a Muslim. And one of my sheikhs I used to follow, Bilal Phillips, was also a Salafi / Wahhabi.
Yeah.
He used to say this is absolutely wrong, but people would come to him, some Muslims, I think this was in the UK, he said, and they would say to him that this is a kuffar country and we can like cheat on our taxes, for example, and we can like cheat on this and cheat on that. And he was against it as a Muslim scholar. He said that this is completely wrong. You're not allowed to be dishonest. You're not allowed to lie. You're not allowed to take advantage. But there is people that think like that in the Muslim community. Now, I remember this disgusted me as a Muslim. I was in the mosque in Ramadan, I think, as a Muslim, and I was talking about the benefit of composting. So I considered myself, and I still consider myself, an environmentalist. I believe that, this one earth that we have to take care of it. We can't just let it rot and, go to hell, especially if you have kids. You want to leave a good place better than you had it. But obviously it's getting, every day we're getting, the environment is getting ruined more and more. So I was talking about the benefit of composting. I said, this is something we can all do in a city. They have compost bins. All you have to do is just take your food waste and they'll take it and they'll make gas out of it and whatever. Right?
Yeah.
This one guy, again, this was a Salafi masjid. He's like, why should we help the kuffar? Like, they're going to make money off it. I'm like, you idiot. You idiot. You're living all among kuffar. This is you're paying taxes to these kuffar, so-called kuffar. Like, your city, it's your city, buddy. Like, what are you saying? You're just going to throw trash on the ground because it's kuffar? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. As a Muslim, it didn't make sense. And I was like, what the hell is wrong with this person? This is such a stupid thing he's saying, right? So I do think that other people like that in the community would think like that. They wouldn't call it taqiyya, though. Like, they would just be like, it's more like, okay, this is more like the concept of wala and bara, which you don't find among Sufi Muslims, but you'll find among Salafi Muslims, that they and I have an article on my blog about Salafism and how I think it's so bad for the world, because one of the problems with it is it's all about, like, as I call it's called wala and bara. So these people, they have a hard time, like coexisting with non-Muslims. They think that they're just kuffar and you shouldn't help them in any way. And even as a Muslim, there was this kind of, certain parts of the community always used to emphasize that we should always move to the Middle East. We should help a Muslim country. Like, you should live in a Muslim country and help the Muslims rather than like helping the kuffar, right? So that was definitely, like, there is that theme in the Muslim community as well, that we should not die, like, especially with like Islamists like Hizb ut-Tahrir. They would say that whoever dies among disbelievers is a hypocrite and this and that. So there's definitely like that is there in the Muslim community, especially among like, I guess, the more Islamists, or the ones who are more political about the way they see Islam, right?
Yeah. I guess I would want to add, I do want you to see the word taqiyya, and then we'll drop it. I think
sure. Yeah, we talked about it a lot. Yeah.
Presenting, but I want to go to the Quran, chapter 328, and then, have you read this verse speaking about, let not believers take the disbelievers as the ayatollah?
Oh yes. Awliya, yeah.
It says being friends here. Another translation.
Yeah.
Instead of the believers, and whoever does that will never be helped. So the word never is very important here.
Yes.
Helped by Allah in any way, and the exception is if you feel danger for them. But I want to show you the tafsir on this one. If you have seen it, that's good. If not, then this could be of value for those who have seen it. Let me see if it's Ibn Kathir. Yeah, Ibn Kathir here. Can you see it on the screen? Yeah. So it says basically, don't support disbelievers. Allah prohibited his believing servant from becoming supportive of disbelievers, and even take them as comrades, as well as developing friendship rather than believers. But if you go down, I just want to show this word, and then I think we can move on. I think people understand what you say, that most Muslims don't even know about this, so we should not mislabel them. If you go down here, it says here, of course, a situation of danger, but you can also not be friends with them. That's the part that's interesting here. So I'll read the one from here. The meaning here is, except those believers who some areas of times fear for their safety from the disbelievers. In this case, such believers are allowed to show friendship to the disbelievers outwardly, but never inwardly. For instance, Bukhari recorded that Abu Darda said, "We smile in the face of the people, although our hearts curse them." And Bukhari was one of the highest authority after the Quran. Bukhari and Hassan said, "Taqiyya is allowed until the day of resurrection." Yeah, if you want to comment on this one and then.
Sure. So the Quran, by the way, can you hear it? Is my sound okay still, or is it?
It's good.
Okay. So the Quran in 328 says, "La tattaqidu al-mu'minin al-kafirin al-awliya min dun al-mu'minin." So what the Quran is saying is, let not the believers take the disbelievers as awliya rather than believers. Now, as a Muslim, when I first read this, I had the Yusuf Ali, when I converted to Sunni Islam and I read this, I actually asked my friends about this. I was confused. I was like, are we not allowed to be friends with non-Muslims? Like, what is that? Like, that's confusing, right? And people take it different ways. Like, one person told me that awliya actually means like protectors, right? Not just friends, but protectors. Now, this is actually a terrible verse in the Quran because it's part of protectors, right? Not just friends. I'm hearing myself now. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. It's saying basically, like, this is one of the awful things in the Quran, that you have this theme of antagonism from Muslims towards non-Muslims in terms of hate, right? It's like, you don't ally yourself with them, don't be friends with them, don't all that stuff. And it's actually like I would agree that this is actually a bad thing. Now, Ibn Kathir, who lived in basically, he died in 1373, so this is from 1300 to 1400. I actually have his tafsir, the full tafsir, in my house, and because it's well respected in the community, right? And when I asked one of my friends again, I said, why is it that Ibn Kathir, after every time, he always says, "May Allah curse the Jews and Christians"? Like, I said, what the hell is that about? Like, even as a Muslim, I was like, that's weird. Like, what's the point of saying that? And he said the reason why was because at that time, when Ibn Kathir was living, they were at war with Christians, right? In the 1300s. He was in Syria or in Cairo. And there was a battle going on. So when you read Ibn Kathir, you are reading like one of the great scholars of Islam, one of the great medieval scholars of Islam, and this is how he interpreted the Quran. At that time, he was saying that you should not basically ally yourself with disbelievers. And even many people, extremists, have taken this as a justification that the Saudis are disbelievers, because they have allied themselves with Americans. Right? So this is one of the verses that is used to justify, like, obviously extremism, even towards Muslims, because Anwar Sadat was assassinated because he came up with a peace treaty with Israel, right? So to me it's sad. Like, I think this is one of the sad things in the Quran that should be, like, if I could have just taken it out, I would just take it out, because that's the problem with the Quran, is it was born in a time and place where they were at war, and it's like that like hostility has been like frozen in time forever and ever. And in general, I'm an atheist, so I actually think the world would be much better in general without these fundamentalist religions. So I don't believe in any God. I don't believe in anything. I think we can do just fine coming up on our own, like how to live as good people. That's what I think, as a secular society.
All right. Thank you for taking your time to answer that. I want to move on. What I notice with you is that you come back to this quite often to make a distinction between Islam and Muslims. Mm-hmm. Would you want to go through that? Why that's important?
Yeah. So, there was a mosque in Quebec in Canada where some guy went in and actually killed a bunch of Muslims. We have to make sure, and especially me, someone like me that talks about Islam all the time, I have to make sure that, like, I'm responsible with my words, so they're not used in order to hate innocent people and to, you know, commit crimes against innocent people that actually may have nothing to do with some of these opinions, right, or beliefs. Now, I do believe that there are bad beliefs in the world, but I believe that people have the right to hold those beliefs, and I will defend the right under secularism to you know, to practice the religion. For example, hijab. I think hijab is horrible. I think it's disgusting. I think it's bad for humanity. Hijab, especially niqab. Niqab is
Yeah.
even worse. But like, let's just talk about hijab.
Yeah.
I do think hijab is bad for the world. But if a woman wanted to wear hijab, I would protect her right to wear that under secularism. Just like, you know, I have a right not to wear it. She had a right to wear it. It's up to her. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I believe that it's everyone's choice to make for themselves to follow the religion, no matter how stupid it is, until you start pushing it on someone else. Now, that's when it becomes a problem. So now if someone wanted to make a law that you have to wear like religious garments, or the trickier one is like when you have a religious right that conflicts with, like, you know, like something that's like kind of allowed in the society. So for example, a Muslim taxi driver who doesn't want to pick up alcohol. Now, I think that's the problem, because now what you have is he's trying to practice his religion, but he's also interfering with the society, right? Or even worse than that is like this one case I heard of, which was so ridiculous. Like, I can't imagine why he did this, but there was a taxi driver who didn't want a blind man with a dog to come into his taxi. And I mean, that is like, that should not be allowed whatsoever. You have to take that. You're a taxi driver and you're called, you have to take that call. Like, that's not right, right? The alcohol one, or it's tricky because I feel like you shouldn't get into a job that you know is going to cause problems for you, right? That's what I think as a Muslim. If you know that there's certain requirements of a job and you know this is going to conflict with your religion, you shouldn't take the job and then say, oh, by the way, I can't do this. But you should be honest and look for a job that will be suitable for your religion. So that's like, those cases are a little bit trickier and we can talk about those. But in general, I do believe that everyone has a right to freedom of religion. And, you know, again, even like something that's even more, you know, kind of annoying, or, you know, let's say detestable, is dawah. I think that Muslims have the right to do dawah, to preach Islam openly. And I have the right to say your religion, in this case, is garbage. And I think it's bad for the world. And I think that by allowing that conversation to happen, allowing them to preach, and also allowing us to respond, we can show them that the religion is actually not good for the world. It's actually not from God. And I think that's where the benefit comes. If you try to make something illegal, like what they're doing in China to the Uyghurs, it makes it even more firm. It doesn't, you don't get rid of it, you make it stronger. And I don't think it's my belief is nobody has a right to prevent someone else from practicing the religion in a sense that doesn't hurt anybody else. So if I want to fast, you know, every day, but I'm not hurting anyone. If I want to be a monk, I don't want to have sex with any women. I want to be, you know, abstinent, chaste. Nobody can stop me from doing that. It's my own freedom of conscience, freedom of belief to do that. Now, if I want to, you know, push that on someone else, that's when the problem is, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess there's a couple of questions here from the chat before we look at one of those questions. Is how do Muslims show you the same courtesy like you are doing? You're being very gentle. You make sure to be specific. You don't generalize. You try to discuss ideas. How are you treated by Muslims?
Oh God. It's a good question. It's the same type of question you sometimes hear worded in a different way, that, well, why should we allow them to do this? Look what they do to us in Saudi. They don't even allow us to have a churches in Saudi. So why should we let them have mosques? Like, you kind of hear that too, and like saying, wow, I'm seeing in the chat that a lot of people with dogs have been rejected. Are you guys in Sweden? Like, that's surprising. I'm disappointed and sorry to hear that. I think that's quite unfortunate, because I don't think you should have to go through that. But anyways, yeah. So your question. So let's talk about in general what happened to me because of what I did. The first thing that happened was I left Islam, and I was very public about it. I was talking on my channel, and I was sorry, not my channel. I didn't have a channel. I was talking on my Facebook. So I left Islam, kind of like I was kind of questioning Islam, and I started to post all these things online. Now, I'm a big part of the Muslim community. I have like so many friends. I was kind of a celebrity in a sense because I converted, right? So I was a popular guy in the Muslim community, and I'm not trying to boast or something. I'm just trying to say that I was well connected in the Muslim community in where I live in Canada, which I don't want to like really say that. So I had a lot of friends, and I started to post things against Islam on my Facebook. And people were like, one of the guys sent me a message. He's like, "Are you doing a social experiment? I'm confused. Why are you posting all these things against Islam?" And I was like, "No, it's not a social experiment. Like, these are like, I'm thinking these are true. These things I'm posting." And he's like, no, you shouldn't post these things publicly. You should go talk to a sheikh, a Maulvi, an imam. You like get your problem solved privately.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, like what do you want me to talk to? And so I started to talk to certain people. I called a bunch of imams, one guy that teaches Islamic studies at a university. I talked to one of the sheikhs that runs or that's involved in one of these big it's called Al Maghrib. So basically one of these institutes that teaches Salafi Islam all over Canada, US, all over the world, actually. I think even UK. I talked to him on the phone. I talked to a bunch of people. I talked to my friends. Even one of my friends, he told me I almost became atheist, and why don't we talk? Like, come to my house. And so I deleted all my posts against Islam.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And he said I almost became atheist, but I came back to Islam. I was like, okay, this is great. I want to hear what you have to say. I deleted everything. I went to his house. We talked for like 4 to 5 hours. And at the end of it, he basically said, like, I had these issues and I found some explanation for these issues. These issues I couldn't find a solution for. And so I put them aside, and I'm taking a leap of faith. And I basically what's called Pascal's wager. Yeah. I don't want to take a chance and be wrong, basically, right? Yeah. And then I said, okay, but this was very early on in my apostasy. So I asked him, I said, well, what if I have more questions? Can I discuss with you? And he said, no, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Yeah. He's like, I'm done. I'm Muslim now. And that's it. I don't want to think about this stuff anymore. So I said, okay. And then next week I started posting again because he couldn't solve my problem. And then another friend of mine who teaches at a mosque now, he went to university with me. He said, come talk to me about all your issues. This guy knows Arabic. He learned Arabic from scratch. He's a brown guy like me, but he learned Arabic. And he said, bring me your issues and we'll talk about them. And I brought all my issues to him too. And he's like, okay, after we're done, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm not convinced. He's like, come on, brother. You have to pray with me. Please, do your wudu. And he was like so pushy. So I'm like, okay, fine. I did my wudu. I prayed. And I'm like, why am I praying? Like, I don't even believe in this thing, right? I was just doing it for him, right? And then I went home and I was posting some more stuff. It's like, what are you doing? I said I wasn't convinced. What do you want me to do? So then people started getting angry. Now let's see what the Muslim community, how did they react to me? They felt like really sad about what I was doing. They invited me to this atheism. Now, because of a lot of people are leaving Islam, they decided to have this atheist conference with Yasir Qadi. He's a big sheikh, and he was going to talk about atheism. So they invited me. But at this point, I didn't feel like being the odd atheist out in this whole group of Muslims. It was for Muslims. It wasn't for non-Muslims. But they wanted to invite me, and I didn't feel comfortable going. But anyways, nobody actually... So, okay, let's talk about the community, the people I know in real life. One guy told me that because you created a blog against Islam, I'm not going to help you move. Because he knew I was moving, right? And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I knew this guy like over 10 years. We used to do dawah together at the different malls. We used to sit together and give out flyers and stuff. And we were like good friends. He knew my family, and my family was still Muslim. And so I was like very disappointed that he said that. Not that I really wanted his help. I was getting movers anyways. But like the fact that he said, so there's a difference between leaving Islam and speaking against Islam. As soon as you get into the speaking against Islam, it becomes much more trouble. Now, I'm in Canada. I'm in a safe place. You know, people say you're so brave. But honestly speaking, I'm able to do this because I converted into this religion. My family is very liberal. My mom and dad, they love me no matter what I am. They don't care, right?
Mom, is she a believer?
Yeah, okay. So my mom is okay. So my dad was Ismaili, like I told you, and he's kind of agnostic. My mom, she's also a believer in Islam, but I feel like she's kind of agnostic too. She's
Yeah,
a believer in God. Let's put it like this: she believes in God more than she believes in the rules of Islam.
I
You know
see.
what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So she doesn't care. Like she doesn't think I'm going to hell. I don't even know if she believes in hell. Like to be honest, right? Like she wasn't crying or whatever. She's like, okay. And when I told her some of the reasons why I don't believe, and she was like, oh, I never knew this. Like I never heard of this before. Like I never knew the Quran says this, and I never knew that, and I never knew Muhammad did these things. Like
can I
she
jump in?
never heard these things.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
all, it was news to her. So she still believes in God and whatever. I think she's kind of agnostic maybe, but she's very like liberal, very, very liberal. And my whole family is like that. My whole extended family, they're very liberal, very accepting, except for one brother who converted to Islam just like I did, to Sunni Islam. And
Yeah.
he also went down the line of becoming like Salafi, and anyways, he doesn't like me. I won't talk about him, but he still is a religious Muslim. He doesn't want to talk to me about it. So
I see.
he lets me be and I let him be. That's basically it.
So I don't want to. I do want to respect boundaries. So I'm not going to ask you any follow-up questions.
But
But
let me say one more thing that did happen. So something did happen to me. So then after I made my first video, that's when I started to get death threats online, right?
oh,
And I got tons and tons of them. But here's the thing. Honestly speaking, like death threats are a dime a dozen. Like it's so easy to get death threats. Even if you're like a feminist, you get death threats. If you're like, like even if you're right wing, like I bet you get death threats. I wouldn't be surprised if you yourself get death threats, right?
no,
So,
no, I don't get. Even
oh, you
Muslims,
don't?
and not no death threat at all. Actually,
Oh, really? Because
the jihadis actually respect me. I just tell them what it is and I show reference, and they're like, "Thank you for showing people. We want more of the Coca-Cola Light Muslim to join us."
so I do get a lot. I did get a lot of death threats. I haven't got any recently, but I don't take them seriously because they're not. It's a very weak signal. In order to give someone a death threat online from an anonymous profile, it's free of charge.
Sure.
There's no like, you're not investing anything into that. But something did happen to me which actually was pretty bad. And what happened to me was I found out there was some online activism going on against me, that they wanted to get me fired from my job.
Yeah.
So I called my boss on the phone and I said, hey, I got to talk to you. And I don't tell anyone at my office what I do. Like I don't talk about this. My own personal life, right? Like I don't need to tell them that. Like I'm in the software industry and I do that. I don't do like atheism or apostasy stuff, right? So when I called him, I said, look, there's an online campaign to get me fired and people are going to call the company. He's like, oh yeah, I know. I said, what? He's like, yeah, it already happened like a few months ago. I said, what? You never told me this? And he's like, yeah, we had people calling and saying that, Abdullah Samir, he should be fired. He's a bad representative of your company. He's a bad representative of your clients. He's against Muslims. I don't know exactly what they said, but they said he's anti-Muslims and he's against Islam and he's hateful and you should fire him. So apparently they had a meeting about me. The whole company had a meeting, not the whole company, but like the president, the human resources, my manager, they had a big meeting and they talked about it and they decided, basically, it's my opinion what I'm talking about online and it's nothing to do with my job. So my job was safe. So I was very thankful that the company I was working for, they actually defended and they protected my rights to freedom of speech, because this was online bullying. Like
Yeah, of course.
not online bullying. This is like real life bullying, right?
Yeah.
So that's the worst thing that happened. Now, yeah, they never told me. Someone saying they never told me. Apparently, they did talk to an agency that I was working with, and the agency was supposed to tell me. So I was supposed to find out, but somehow it didn't get to me. But yeah, but basically the point is they loved me. I was doing a good job, and it didn't get in the way of my job. So like, why should they fire me, right? So yeah, that's basically what happened. That's the worst thing that happened to me. And I do have to say, I do have to be careful, because I'm not trying to say that like, every single Muslim is so peaceful and they all love me and they don't mind what I'm doing. No, they don't like what I'm doing. They detest me, a lot of them. They did try to get me fired, some of them, I don't know who. And, you never know. A crazy guy could try to kill me. Like, I don't know. Like, I have to be careful like about that, because unfortunately, the more popular you get, the more crazy people you attract. Right? That's
Yeah,
just an unfortunate situation that happens.
and also, Abdullah, you're very balanced. There are more people who are more reckless and
Yeah.
basically saying what you're saying plus more,
Yeah.
and maybe half of it. Yeah, I don't want to give an amount. So these people, they are more of interest for them, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I wanted to ask, but I'll save it for later. So I
Okay.
want to ask you. For me, it's important that we talk about truths, because we try to say not all Muslims in one camp. Some of them they believe lightly. Other people they take it more serious scriptly, but many of them don't even know things. So we should be careful with generalizing. Well, the only way that I know to generalize is using statistics, and Muslims themselves have given certain opinion when it comes to a lot of questions. For example, Sharia law, they ask them in a lot of countries. So these things worries us when we see the numbers. We see that, for example, I was on one of your live streams not long ago that you were saying that most Muslims would actually report to the police if they know that something, terror tips, they would give terror tips to the police. But in UK, 66% say they would not. These things troubles us. Have you heard about this study?
So this is the exact study that that I was talking about,
Yeah.
where actually it's not, it's a lot of people are trying to use that study.
Which one?
The same one. Hold on, you want me to look it up?
You research?
Yeah, I looked into this exact study that you're talking about because someone tweeted me this, right? And I'm trying to find it right now.
I have it here actually, if you want.
Can you send me the link?
Yeah, I can send the link if you want.
Because what I did actually, so what I've noticed is some news outlets, or not even news outlet, this was like a blog, right? It was called, oh yeah, I found it. It's newsletter. It was on newsletter. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found it. Okay, so okay, I found the article. So basically, what the article was saying is half of. Let me just share my screen here. Is what is it? Screen one. Yeah, so what I noticed is, like, for example, this newsletter.co.uk, which apparently is just someone's blog. I don't even know who runs this thing. They're trying to say almost half of UK Muslims would not report someone with IS links, right? And so what I did was I said, this is kind of scary, like this is surprising, right? So I looked for the actual name of the study. Now the study is called, oh, here we go, Unsettled Belonging, the British Muslim communities, right? So the actual, oh, come on, it didn't copy, 1 second.
Take your time.
The actual study itself, when I looked into it, was actually quite interesting. Okay, here it is. And basically these guys were actually quite positive about what they were saying in the study. What they said was that, first of all, the first time they did the study, there was less people that would have reported to the police, but then when they did it again, it went over 60%, right? So hold on a second, right? So this is actually like a good study, right? And they came up with some interesting analysis. What they said was, in certain areas, Muslims were much more likely to go to the police, and in certain areas they were more likely to go talk to a community leader. And so there's a difference based on where in the UK they were, whether they were likely to go to the community or whether they were likely to just call the police directly. And again, this is kind of too much for me to summarize right now, because
Sure.
I have to go through it. But basically, when I did go through it, there was a lot of really positive things in there too. Like, for example, it's saying a clear majority of British Muslims favor an essentially secular education, right? And it says that it basically, like, they do believe that, that if there was like a terror threat, that it should be dealt. Most of them said it should be dealt with properly. Of course, there is unfortunately the minority that still did say they wouldn't tell anyone. And of course, like I told you, I've seen those attitudes myself in the community, where people have this they call it wala and bara, where it's us versus them thinking. And so, but thankfully, I do believe that most Muslims that are living in Canada, or again, I cannot speak on behalf of UK, but I would think it's similar. They love the country. They love the like the fact that they were able to, like, even me as a Muslim, I was able to practice my religion. So they like that, and they want to support that in the sense that they don't want any harm to come to the country, because they'll get harmed too. Like when 9/11 happened, a bunch of, like, the backlash against Muslims was insane. Like Muslims are so scared that a terrorist attack is going to happen, because they will also be victims as well. Either they'll be direct victims, like if you look at, you know, Al-Shabaab in Kenya, like most of the victims are Muslims, like Boko Haram, like a lot of the victims are Muslims as well. So Muslims are just as like hurt by terrorism as non-Muslims. I don't know if it's like the percentage based, but a lot of Muslims that are running from ISIS are Muslim as well, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people that are scared of ISIS, they're coming to the West because they don't want to live under this religious fundamentalism, right? So I don't know about the percentage exactly, but I do think that in that one case of that specific study, which is called Unsettled Belongings, I do think that many websites are kind of misrepresenting what it's saying. Because if you look up, like, for example, The Guardian, or if you look up independent, like, actual news outlets, they were quite positive about what the study said. Like, they were pretty reasonable. So, and you can read the study yourself, like, honestly, if anyone wants to read it.
It's from Channel 4, that
okay.
polls from 2015.
Oh, so it's different than the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, I have it downloaded, actually.
Oh, so it's not Unsettled Belonging. You're talking about a different one.
Yeah, from 2015. And the numbers that would not call the police was 66%. So
can you send me the link? Did you send me the link? Oh, you did send me the link. Oh, okay. The Pew Forum you're talking about?
No. If you want the one for this one that I'm telling you about, I have it here, actually. Okay. You want it right now?
Yeah, let's take a look so I can just see what you're talking about, or share your screen, whatever you like.
Yeah. I don't have the specific page, but I have here is the study. Okay. Let me just get an article as well.
You know, while you're looking for that, I just want to say something kind of funny and interesting. When I first came out as an ex-Muslim, I actually was feeling here's a funny thing. I was accused of taqiyya, like, many times. When I first came out as an ex-Muslim, people would ask me, why do you still have lightuponlight.com? Like, why do you still have why do you still have Islamic videos on your YouTube channel? People actually thought I was like a closeted Muslim that was just pretending. Now, I don't know what benefit you would have to come out as an ex-Muslim and to say, I don't believe in Muhammad, he's a fake prophet, but actually you're actually a Muslim. Like, that's a hilarious kind of thing to do. But that's what happened to me. So that's why when I first met you, I was kind of hesitant that this Taqiyya, when I saw your name was Taqiyya Watch, I'm like, oh my God, is he going to accuse me of doing Taqiyya? Because that's what happened to me in the beginning, right? But now, after 4 years almost of speaking against Islam, it's pretty hard to say I'm doing Taqiyya, because it's a pretty long time to be insulting the Prophet, right? Like, at some point you have to be like, hold on, maybe he is actually not a Muslim.
Actually, if they would be a little bit bright, they would understand that the reason why you left videos there is to show that you have a past.
Yes, exactly. People don't believe me, right? Like, a lot of people say, oh, you're a fake ex-Muslim. No, I have proof.
Yeah. So this study is 615 pages. We're not going to go through it. I don't have the specific page, but I can show you the article where they have summarized the result.
Okay.
And then I want to move on. I would rather go to Pew Research, but here is what they're reporting about this. So Channel 4, it's like CNN in America. Astonishing that 2 in 3 British Muslims would not give police terror tips. So this one is from 2016, the article. The study was conducted 2015. That's when they asked the questions. So probably 6 months later, they produced this study. So that's where I get this from.
So this is interesting, because I would like to, there's a couple of things I would want to do here. I would want to see, who is this ICM Unlimited? Not that it matters who they are, but did they do this properly? Like, did they make sure that the study wasn't biased and that they did a fair representative of, like, basically, is it a fair sample? Right? And did they use the proper processes? And has this been peer reviewed? The other study I showed you, which was done by a proper think tank, was, or like the Pew one. I think that's something I would trust. I'm not totally sure about this one until I can actually look into it, because I have no idea if they did a proper job or not here. You know what I'm saying?
And for those who want to double check it, I'll add it to the video description, so anybody can check it. And
because again, in the other study did say that some of these people, it's not that they don't want to tell the police necessarily. It's that they might think that they might feel more comfortable talking to the imam, and then it becomes the imam's responsibility to tell the police. So the reason I think we have a bit of a problem, I don't know about UK, but I do know myself in Canada, is as a Muslim, I was a bit, now I didn't have this wala bara thing like I was telling you with us against them. I didn't think like that. I actually respected non-Muslims, and even like, for example, that young lady who went to Israel and she was run over by bulldozers, like Rachel Corey, I actually liked her, and I said she did a good thing. She was trying to stand up for the rights of the oppressed people or whatever. But I wasn't like, oh, she's just a dumb kafir, she's going to hell, because that's what some of my Muslim friends used to say. But I did feel that I was a bit scared to go to the police, especially after 9/11. There was a fear among the Muslim community that even if you have nothing to do with terrorism, you're going to end up like in a Guantanamo Bay style prison where they're going to be blasting loud music, they're going to be torturing you and waterboarding you, and you're going to say whatever they want to hear just to be safe. So even if you knew somebody, like I was like scared to talk to the police. So I think that, like, I actually knew one guy. I mentioned this in a previous like live chat I did. I actually knew one guy that wanted that converted to like from Shia Islam to Sunni Islam, and he became like completely radicalized overnight, right? And he wanted to do something bad, and I actually told him, don't do it, right? And he actually listened to me because he liked me. But I didn't go to the police at that time until much later. After I left Islam, I went to the police. But at the time, I don't know what I'm pretty sure if I knew for sure he was going to do something dangerous, I would have told him. But I can't say, I don't know now. But I do know that I was scared. I didn't want anything to do with him. I didn't want any connection whatsoever, that I would somehow end up in this long trial and my whole life would be ruined. My face would be all over the news that I was like friends of this terrorist guy or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
It wasn't a loyalty question.
I was scared to become like any way connected to any sort of, so I think when they're saying 66% don't want to go to the police, we can, like, I think part of it is that some of them would find another way of dealing with it. Like they might tell a friend or they might tell a community elder, but they might not go to the police. But I think a lot of them would go to the police now. And one of the things they mentioned in that study I was telling you about, the think tank study, the Unsettled belongings, they said that between the 3 years or 4 years when they did it, the percentage that would go to the police has gone up. So, and I'm seeing this in general as well, that Muslims in general, and this is why we didn't talk about reforming Islam.
We got to come there.
Okay, so but this is why I do think that the reform is important, because the Muslim community is changing. And they're becoming much more pro-secular. I think they're becoming much more moderate, much more accepting.
Well, can I challenge that a little bit? Right. So I've shown you a couple of numbers, but if there's anything that I would want to show you, it would not be what I showed you earlier.
Okay.
Your research from 2013.
Yes.
You know about this, is very famous.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, what would you give commentary on these? That the numbers for those who want what basically ISIS wants.
So
is these numbers, and they ask follow-up questions like, how do you feel about apostates? How do you feel about, should we stone people? Should we cut off hands?
Yeah,
numbers like Indonesia is 230 million people. I would wish that number would be 10 people. You can work with that.
So some
before you actually respond, I just want you to include some things when you answer.
Yes.
So some of us, we feel like people are trying to butter us up, that the problem is not that bad. And then we see these things and then we read, and I need you to include that in your response.
Okay. So some Muslims will try to say Sharia law is how to pray 5 times a day. I've heard this before. And technically they're correct, but Sharia law is much more than that. It's not just praying 5 times a day and how to fast.
Who far knows?
It's more than that. Now, here's the thing. I think there's a big difference between Muslim majority countries and Muslims in like the West. In Canada, like I know very, very practicing Muslims that like if you force them to answer, they would say, yes, I want Sharia, but only because they have to say that, because if you don't want Sharia, like what kind of Muslim are you? Because that's God's law, right? Now, what is Sharia law to them? Okay, unfortunately, to many, like let's say for example, let's talk about this. First of all, this is a very disappointing result, this survey. And unfortunately, it is the case in many parts of the world that these people do want Sharia law. If you look at Egypt, they democratically elected what's his name? The
Mubarak.
Huh?
Oh, no, you mean afterwards, yeah. I forgot his
after
name.
After Mubarak, oh man, it's not, my name is not coming to my mind.
Muslim Brotherhood guy.
Yes, Morsi. They democratically voted Mohammed Morsi into power, and he's an Islamist, right? Now, I mean, this is unfortunate. Like this, there are people who want Sharia law in the world. Now, many Muslims that I have met in the West, like I'd say like theoretically they want Sharia law, but they wouldn't really want it, I think, if it came to that, like in reality, because we are so spoiled. Us, like, not us, but like Muslims who are in the West are so spoiled, they don't even realize like how good they have it. And many of these people, they never even travel to a Muslim country, and they haven't seen like what it's like to have Sharia law, because like Sharia law is not, it's not really there anywhere in the world per se. It's pieces, bits and pieces are there and here and there, but I don't think they realize like how shitty a life it would be. And I think even as a Muslim, I struggled maybe a little bit with this, which is, I think I realized like how amazing life was in Canada. And when I went to live in Egypt, I mean, there was no Sharia law in Egypt.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a nice place. I didn't like it. Right? Like I didn't like living there. And when I came back to Canada, I was so happy. Like when I didn't even realize like how miserable I was over there, partly because I couldn't speak the language. Yeah. But I didn't like it there. And I do think that a lot of Muslims, they don't even realize. Some of them, they actually went to join ISIS, and they're like, where's my cappuccinos? There's no Starbucks cappuccino here. I hate my life. I want to go back. But you joined a terrorist organization. You can't go back now, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of people are just naive. And unfortunately, they fall for this kind of like pie in the sky type of Sharia dream world. They're sold a lot of lies. The Muslim community is not told, is not taught the reality of how shitty, like like just look at Islamic government. Prophet Muhammad like died, and there was like chaos. Nobody knew who was supposed to be the next one in power. And there was like infighting, and the people were apostatizing all over the place. And, you know, they had to fight them to bring them back. It's called the Ridda Wars, the Wars of Ridda. And then you had people being assassinated, like you know, all of the caliphs one after another were killed. Like, people are not told that Aisha, I mean, some Muslims know, especially Shias know this, that Ali fought against Fatima, the daughter, against Aisha, not Fatima. Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, fought against Ali, the grandson and the nephew of the Prophet, and the son-in-law. They fought, not the grandson, the son-in-law of the Prophet and his wife were fighting. Like, this is insanity. But the Muslim community, even if you go on like Islam QA and stuff, they say you shouldn't talk about this. The Muslim scholars, they're not encouraged to talk about these problems. And so, like, unfortunately, young Muslims, they're naive, a lot of them, they're naive and stupid. And they think, some of them think that ISIS is some dream world where Allah's angels are going to come down and they're going to win against America. Like, it's so stupid and it's so sad. But they're living in a fantasy world. They don't realize that they're living a lie. And when they go there, that's when they realize, right? Like,
but that's not really my argument. My argument is that as the Muslim population, if it grows, will these ideas grow, you know? Because I showed you these numbers in Muslim majority nations. You know, I showed you Sharia, and you might say that some Muslims understand Sharia. It's about praying, but you're talking to Taqiyya Watch, you know. I'll take the next page when they ask follow-up questions. Let me see if there's any relevance here. No, not disputes. Punishment, corporal punishments. The number is not low. You know, they ask them follow-up questions. What about stoning for adultery? The numbers are still not low. What about, do I have death penalty for leading Islam? So like these are the things that we need to address. And one way, we can leave this topic, but this is all the things that the so-called Islamophobes are looking at. And okay, I'm a little bit organized, but I want to show you what's happening in Europe. This is in France from 2016, where the support for Sharia law between 18 to 29 years of age is 29%. You know, so basically the ground is there. So that was France. Next country is UK. This is the Guardian. The numbers is 23%. The one Sharia law. those were asked. And the last thing is Denmark. 40% says from those who were asked. I don't know how many they were asked, but this is the thing that I would want people to comment. I'll leave the last comment for you, if you want to.
Like I said, I think that these are okay. I was taught as a Muslim that if you prefer like democracy to Sharia law, like you are a kafir, or you could be a kafir, and Bilal Phillips said this. So the problem is that many Muslims feel like they have to believe, and if you ask them in a poll, it's a very easy question to say, yeah, I'm a good Muslim, I believe in Sharia law, I want Sharia law. But when it comes down to it, like, I'm not sure if these same Muslims would now, of course, like I said, Muhammad Morsi is an example of them actually wanting Sharia law, and they tried to get it, and of course he was kicked out. And I don't know exactly how much Sharia law he was trying to implement anyways, but because we live in a global world, and so I do think that if Sharia law came back, it would be really bad for the world in general. I'm against Hizb ut-Tahrir. One of my strongest hates, or whatever you want to call it, is against Hizb ut-Tahrir, which is against Islamist groups that want to bring back Sharia law.
Yeah.
And I do think that many Muslims do theoretically support Sharia law because they feel like they have to. I don't know if they would actually support it if they actually saw what it really was, which is why I think most Muslims detest ISIS.
I agree with you 100%, Abdullah. You see that they tolerate it, not necessarily that they love it. That's a really good distinction. I agree with you 100%. But at the same time, Sharia law is not implemented with democracy. It's taken, right? And then you declare it. So the question is, where would the loyalty be if there is a problem, you know?
So here's the thing. Okay, so here's an interesting point. Here's a very interesting point. Sharia, okay.
Did you like that distinction, by the way? Tolerate.
Yeah.
Loving.
I appreciate that. Thank you. This is a very good point I have to make. I have to emphasize that as a Muslim, I was taught, now again, Bilal Phillips is one of the people that spoke about this, that we are not allowed to take the law in our own hands. Let's say, for example, someone is drinking alcohol, and alcohol is haram in Islam. I'm not allowed to go and use the Islamic punishment. Now, the funny thing is, there's no like, it's a discretionary punishment in Islam for drinking alcohol. Like the scholars say that you can hit them with a shoe, or I don't know. There's like, it's kind of silly. Like there's no actual punishment described in the Sunnah, but they used to beat up people that was drinking in the Islamic state of Prophet Muhammad. So people who were drunkards, they would beat them, right, with sticks or whatever, right? Now, the important distinction to make is it has to be done by a judge, a qadi. The Islamic judge has to say that this person is guilty according to these witnesses and whatever, and then it'll be this punishment. But it cannot be done vigilante style. So if you are living, and many Muslims would actually agree, and like I said, Bilal Phillips would agree too, that you have to go by the law of the land. and you cannot just like break the law and make your own laws, right? That is not allowed in Islam. Now, it is not allowed in the Islam that I followed as a Muslim. Now, again, there's going to be crazy people that don't fit in the Muslim community. They don't go to the mosques, and they will do their own shit. Like they will, like, I don't know, do crazy things. There's crazy people for sure, extremists, right? But the mainstream, both Salafism and traditional Islam. Now, one thing we didn't get to talk about. Hold on, I just want to. One thing we didn't get to talk about yet, which is the form, but I just want to note that so I don't forget. And Sharia law, and how some scholars are handling that. But one more thing I want to say is, the only way, like, and this is jihad as well. Jihad is another example of this.
Yeah.
I cannot just make jihad as a Muslim on you. Jihad has to be done by the state, by the Amir, by the government. The government of a country or the ruling power has to say that we are going to do jihad. It is not for like a random group of Muslims to say, okay, but that's exactly what happened with ISIS. They decided we are going to make a caliphate and we are going to self-represent ourselves as a government, and now we are going to do jihad. Now, the thing is, how can you say they are wrong Islamically? I don't think you can, because who's right and who's wrong? Like, who decides who's a like proper ruling authority? But of course, inside a non-Muslim country, you can't do that because there's no government, and you cannot just make jihad on people. Now, of course, if a real government does it, now again, Muslims would, I don't know how you would decide who's a real government, because honestly speaking, ISIS is a manifestation of the worst things in the Islamic texts. That's what it is. So it's very hard for a Muslim to say this has nothing to do with Islam, because it has everything to do with Islam. But why do most Muslims reject ISIS? Now that's an interesting question. If ISIS is doing everything that is found in the Quran and Sunnah, how is it that people are condemning ISIS? Is it cognitive dissonance? Is it that they don't want to admit that this is actually what Islam is about and not what I'm following? I think what's happened is that we have to acknowledge that ISIS is one manifestation of Islam, but it's not the only one. There are many ways to interpret Islam, and thankfully, ISIS is a minority. Now, Sharia law, again, is a tricky subject because you have scholars like Hamza Yusuf, who is a big American convert to Islam. He studied in Mauritania for like 15 years. He is well respected in the community. He's a famous guy. And he has said openly, and I have this in an article I wrote on Reform in Islam, that he's Sunni Muslim, okay? He's Sufi leaning, that he believes that apostasy law, it needs to be thrown out. Stoning adulterers, chopping off hands, all of the hudud punishments, we don't need them anymore. Now, the question is, how can he say that as a Muslim scholar? Because, of course, on the other side, the Islamists, Hizb ut-Tahrir, and these guys, they're like saying he's a sellout, he's a kafir, and he's this and that. But he is actually a mainstream Muslim scholar. And how is he able to say that? Is he says the goals of Sharia are to preserve life, preserve lineage, preserve wealth. And under the goals of Sharia, these don't make sense anymore. So we want to throw them out. Now, of course, there will be disagreement in the Muslim community. Now, Bilal Phillips, and as a Salafi, would disagree with him and say, no, we cannot throw out these things. We have to kill adulterers, but not kill adulterers in Britain. Not like that. In an Islamic state which has proper laws that say adultery is haram, and you have 4 witnesses, you would have to stone, or he or she admitted that they did it, you would have to stone them to death.
Yeah.
Under the proper laws of the country, but not in the West or something like that. But still, it's disgusting that they're saying that we still want to do this. Whereas thankfully, you have a big part of the Muslim community, which is basically the Sufi-leaning community. They are the ones who are saying, we don't want this anymore, and we still want Islam. Now, it's kind of strange, and it's very difficult for some non-Muslims to understand that, but Islam is changing. And these guys will not admit that it's changing, but it's changing. And they don't want to say that because Islam is perfect, right? You know, Allah perfected his religion 1400 years ago. Today, you know, Allah says in the Quran, today I perfected your religion, and blah, blah, blah. But, well, it's changing. So how did he perfect it, right? Well, they will say, no, it's not changing. It's just, it's still the goals under the goals of Sharia. But it is very important to recognize that it is changing. And these are mainstream, orthodox, practicing Muslims who are allowing it to change. And the other guys who sadly still believe in apostasy law, they understand that it'll only happen theoretically in an Islamic state. But somehow, for the Salafis, they have to find a way of saying ISIS is not proper, which is, don't ask me, that's cognitive dissonance I did. Because according to Salafism, like ISIS is just the next step. If you're like Salafis are against terrorism, but how can they be against ISIS is tricky, and it's not. I don't know how exactly you can do that, because they're following all the straightforward black and white hadiths, just like Salafis do, right? But they go against the Salafi scholars of Saudi Arabia, and Ibn Uthaymeen and Bin Baz. All of these scholars are against terrorism. All of the Salafi scholars, which surprises people. If you go to like a Salafi website like Fatwa Online, they are against terrorism, but of course they are Saudi scholars. So Saudis fear ISIS more than anybody else. Because the Saudis, they have the kingdom. They want to keep sitting on the wealth and the riches, and they want status quo. They don't want anything to happen to them. And the terrorists, they want to kill the Saudis, because they see Saudis as biggest sellouts of all, right? So there's definitely a big part of the Muslim community that's against this, right? And that's kind of like where I'm coming from, like when I talk about Islamic reform.
I think you're getting a lot of props in the chat for being nuanced.
Okay.
So that's cool. So we have done an hour now. I wanted to ask you, what is your time? Like,
I'm okay. We can keep going for a little bit longer. No
15
problem.
minutes is all right?
Yeah, we can go. We can have another 30 minutes. No problem. Yeah.
Okay. So we're having a lot of questions from the chat here. Someone is asking you here about, I think that's a really good segue to reform. What are your thoughts about reformers like Imam Tawhidi? That's coming from a Muslim called JK.
Okay, I actually wanted to ask you a question first.
Yeah, please.
Because you wanted to say that there's some things you disagree with me, and we didn't talk about that yet. Did we talk about that? Or do you want to talk about what you disagree with me, and we get that out of the way before we go to questions?
Yeah, we can do that. Yeah.
Okay, because you've been very, I can see you're trying very, very hard to be very respectful to me, and I appreciate that. Okay. But I do want you to just speak your mind too, and just say what you want to say, right?
Yeah. So what you're pointing to is Muslims who disagree with Islam. I often say that when I live stream and so is I think that Muslims are better than what Islam demands from them. So those Muslims I'm talking about is those majority of them actually accept Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, the sixth Hadith, many of these tafsirs. When you bring it up to them, they do agree with it, these sources. So if you would implement Islam like Muhammad would do it, at least the first 3 generations, I would say that you would have ISIS. Actually, ISIS are a teddy bear compared to the first 3 generations that invaded over 30 nations. And
because they're not successful, you mean? Right? They're not successful because ISIS is not successful, you mean?
I think they're kinder than how Muhammad is.
No, I would disagree with that in some ways, because one of the things that Salafis have condemned, well, I mean, not just Salafis, but every Muslim has condemned ISIS for burning people alive, because there's a hadith that says only Allah can burn. Only Allah is allowed to do that, nobody else. And so ISIS has drowned people alive. Like the things they've done, now the question is, okay, we can kind of talk about this for a second. How does ISIS justify? Because ISIS claims to be the pinnacle of Islam, right? Now, how do they justify burning people alive? What do you know how they do this? You do? Okay, go ahead. Tell me.
Tabari, they go to Sira, and they go to Muhammad did.
Okay, no. Well, specifically, what they say is, they say that they bombed us. So you know the guy they burned alive. He was one of the bombers of Qatar. No. Oman. I don't know. One of the countries, right?
Jordanian.
Oh, Jordanian. Yes, the Jordanian pilot. They said they're bombing us. So under the rule, yes, exactly, eye for an eye, under the rule of qiyas, we can burn them back. Now, again, most Muslim scholars, and they quote Ibn Taymiyyah, most Muslim scholars say that even in qiyas, you cannot use fire as a punishment, right? The reason why ISIS is being so extreme in the punishments is they are, the undergunned, right? They don't have enough power. So what they're doing is they're trying to use extreme fear to make everybody not fight them, because the more barbaric they are, the more fearful the enemy will be, and they will be less likely to attack them, right? Because what we have here is we have Muslims. We have like Jordanian government is a Muslim government, the bombing ISIS. So it's Muslims fighting Muslims, right? So, but I think that's how ISIS justifies it. But anyways, go on.
Yeah.
So I
So
don't think they're more barbaric. I think you can say I think you can say ISIS is far more barbaric than Muhammad was, because ISIS is in the 21st century, and we as human beings, we know better than to act like this. Whereas back then, like it was a like dog eat dog. Like if you don't kill the country next to you, they'll kill you back. So it was a lot of barbarity going on back then in that country in the Middle East anyways. So I think I don't know how you could say ISIS is like a puppy compared to Muhammad. But anyways, let's continue.
Well, obviously, I'm trying to make a point that he is the original, and they tried to copy what he's doing. That was what I so
got it. Yeah,
I would want to show you what Muhammad did and what Abu Bakr did, according to Islam's most trusted sources, and maybe you'll see where I get my stuff from. So this is Sahih Muslim, right? So Muhammad is going to punish people that have done something worth death, right? So just get them, so they have murdered someone. That's the context. They've killed a shepherd. So Muhammad is actually saying that, hey, basically he got the news and he's sending people for them. Have you heard about this hadith?
Oh, yes. I read about this as a Muslim. And even then I was like, what the hell? Like, this is crazy.
Let me read it. So the Prophet got their hands cut off, and then their feet, and then put out their eyes and threw them on stony ground until they died. So this is not addressing burning someone, but it's saying burning their eyes, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not going to do far stretch. If you go to some Q&A,
Go ahead.
Q&A, it's describe how you should kill people that are homosexual, right? There's different ways of doing it. One of the ways is that you can burn them. That's what Abu Bakr did. So it's not foreign. Even you can go to Al-Tabari.
Yeah, the burning to death that the companions did was condemned because of the hadith that Prophet Muhammad said, I would have not done that because only Allah is allowed to use fire. So the companions, some of them did this, but they were actually condemned for it. And again, this goes back to the same problem of religion being man-made, and there's contradictions. And so people will pick and choose the ones that they like. So ISIS is going to choose the way that leads to the most barbaric, extreme, harsh way, and other Muslims will say, no, let's use the hadith that says fire is forbidden. Because actually, like even from the Islamic sources, a hadith of Muhammad goes above what the companions did. So if Muhammad said don't use fire and the companions used fire, of course what he said would go above them. But obviously they can disagree on that, right? Like you're showing a good example that some of them actually did this, right? So
yeah, I can show Muhammad if you want. I mean, I'm talking to decent Muslims that I do like, that I engage with, and they accept the Seerah, they accept Islam Q&A. So let me show you when Muhammad did it.
Okay.
All right, so this is the Seerah. I have it in book format as well. Have you heard about the Seerah?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
On page 5 and 15, this is when Muhammad is killing the wife that he takes, her husband, Kinana, right? So he wants his treasure. I'm not going to read all of it. He wants his treasure. So he's torturing him to get it. And what he does is he's sending people to kindle a fire flint on the steel of his chest until he was nearly dead. And then he beheaded him. Struck his head. So he's using fire. So these things matters. If you accept the biography, so yeah, maybe you don't accept the biography, but there's a lot of people who do that. Without the biography, actually, you can correct me if I'm mistaken. Without the biography, you don't have the timeline of the Quran. The hadith is not enough.
The hadith is definitely like, piecemeal. There's like hadith here, everywhere. And the hadith came 200 years after Muhammad's death, right? Like, so there's a big chance that many of the hadith are actually fabricated and were invented by the kings and the rulers in order to justify their own, what they wanted to do. So for example, a lot of the hadith about, fighting in the cause of Allah and this and that, like they may have actually been invented after the fact so that Muslims would do these things. And I actually, on my Medium, I've started writing on Medium. I summarized an article by the Muslim scholar Jonathan Brown that talked about how in early Islam, like for the first like 1,000 years, Muslim scholars were happy to use weak hadith, not for Islamic rulings, like, you know, how many days you fast to make up if you miss a fast and this and that, but for the actual like story, for the actual like reward and punishment. They were gladly using weak hadith, which are questionable whether Muhammad even said them, but they were happy to say that in order to convince more Muslims to be more religious. So basically, for the 1,000 years, we have Muslim scholars. I'm talking about big scholars like you know, Nawawi was a bit against it, but like many like Zamakhshari and like tons of them were actually in favor of using weak hadith, as long as they didn't know for sure if it was fabricated. If they knew for sure it was fabricated, they wouldn't use it. But again, all it needed was 2 chains, and then they would say, oh, it's weak, it's not fabricated, and then they would use it. So there's a lot of so if you want to look at historically, there's very little we actually know about what Muhammad actually did. But if you're talking to Sunni Muslims, of course, you can say that, well, Sunni Muslim wouldn't go by like Muhammad tortured Kinana, so therefore it's okay to torture, because the hadith, like again, when it comes to Islamic rulings, you don't go by the seerah, because the seerah is at a lower level of authenticity. According to Muslims,
that's true.
The seerah is at a lower level of authenticity than the hadith. But the funny thing is, the hadith came far later.
That's true.
But true. Even the seerah, like we lost the like there was it Ibn Hisham? Hold on, I always confuse the two of them.
Yeah, Ibn Hisham is the later one.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was like whatever survived was already like kind of edited by Ibn Hisham, right? So it was written by Ibn Ishaq, but it was lost, and all we have is a surviving copy that Ibn Hisham had inside his biography. So who knows, like, again, how accurate that is. I mean, that was like Ibn Hisham died in 833, like far after Muhammad died, long after Muhammad died, right? So
I think it's a little bit difficult because I don't believe in any of this.
Yeah.
There's Muslims who believe this, and most of them are not Quranists. So for those who believe this, they're going to take this serious. So I'm talking from their perspective.
Yeah. So from their perspective, nobody uses seerah to come up with like rulings, but True. they would use a hadith though, especially if a hadith says "do not burn." Most scholars would jump on this and say ISIS made a mistake here and they're wrong. But again, ISIS says no. We, according to the rule of qiyas, we can do this, and it comes back to who is right and who is wrong. There is no right and wrong here. It's all man-made. At the end of the day, right? Like even the rules used to interpret the Quran, when people say like the Quran says, you know, chop off the hands. Well, who is to say under what condition that chopping off the hand is applied? Is it applied for stealing a chocolate bar? No, of course not. Nobody says that. So, okay, well, under what conditions is it applied? Is it still applied today, or is it not applied today? This is something that Muslim scholars will go on about. But what's important is to know what Muslims believe, not necessarily. Like, we don't want to straw man Muslims and say it's in Ibn Kathir, therefore that's what Islam says. No, well, that's one Muslim scholar's opinion, and he is a scholar. So if he said that's something you should think about. Why did he say that? But we can't say that is Islam only. I think there's more than one Islam, and Islam is varied in whatever, right?
But at the same time, I would want to challenge you on that, because my interaction with Muslims is that maybe they don't know it. But when you ask them, you know, if this would have Sharia law today, and this was part of the teaching, and the judge would want this, would you stand behind it, or would you try to convince them, or where do you stand? It's very it's not often that they would disagree with it. Sometimes they would say you have to read Arabic, you know. But when you push them, and like, if it said this in Arabic, would you stand behind it? I'm sorry, Abdullah Samir, but I'm not sure if you have convinced yourself about this. But I think that my experience is very different from yours. I've debated this for many years, and most Muslims will support Muhammad if he said so, if they would find out, if they'd be pushed. But
well, that's what I'm saying. That like, so what I want to share with you is like what I was saying earlier about how is it. Okay, so for example, this is the scholar of, I'm sharing my screen. His name is bin Baya, Abdullah bin Baya. He's a scholar, the Sheikh of Hamza Yusuf. He's a Hamza Yusuf scholar, and he's actually saying that we need to get rid of these these garbage, well, they don't call it garbage, but these
Wow.
outdated religious laws, right?
Wow.
And so they don't consider it as un-Islamic to not do this. Again, I have to separate between these guys who consider themselves what they call traditional Muslims, or following traditional Islam, versus Salafis. Now, the funny thing is, Salafis consider themselves to be following the original Islam, but these guys were willing to change it and to say that we shouldn't be following some of these laws anymore. And we still believe in Muhammad, and Muhammad is still the best of mankind, and he is a pinnacle of prophethood, and he is a master. They call him Sayyid, right? And they celebrate his birthday. The Sufis and the traditional, what they call themselves traditional Muslims,
Yeah.
they still want to throw out all of these things in Sharia law. Hamza Yusuf has come under attack by some Muslims by saying Islam is compatible with democracy. Like, he actually said that there's no disagreement between democracy and Islam. Now,
He said that?
this is, yes, if you look, Hamza Yusuf has said democracy and Islam are compatible. Now, like Bilal Phillips says, no, democracy is kufr. Now, Bilal Phillips, I as a Muslim, I sided with Bilal Phillips. I didn't understand where Hamza Yusuf was coming from. Now, as an ex-Muslim, I can see both perspectives, and I can understand where Hamza Yusuf is coming from, and I can understand where Bilal Phillips is coming from. Bilal Phillips is, I think, closer to the truth, in my opinion. But what Hamza Yusuf is preaching is better for the world, and they still call it Islam, and Muslims believe and follow these scholars. So this is what I support, right?
Yeah. So I think the time that's left, we'll take question from the chat.
Okay. So what was the question? Let's go back to the question you already asked me.
Asked you about Imam Tawhidi. He's working for reform. What do you think about this? Do you? By the way, I have him booked in a couple of weeks. So don't make me look. Anyway, speak for yourself. I love him, by the way.
I think Islamic reform is a good thing. I don't understand Imam Tawhidi because I feel, and maybe I should have a conversation with him too, but I feel like a lot of the things he says are like pro-Shia propaganda. That's what it feels like. Like, that's what it sounds like to me. Like, I'll give you just one example. He says Aisha, the favorite wife of Muhammad, was a slut, a whore. She was, sleeping with every man in town until Muhammad married her. And so in order to show that she's kind of like the Virgin Mary, she's pure, they said she's a kid. So obviously if she's a kid, she couldn't have slept with all these men. I have no idea, like, where he got this from. Like, I have never heard this before. Now, Shias, they detest Aisha. They detest Abu Bakr. They detest Omar because they consider that Ali should have been the caliph, the only caliph, not these other people. They consider that these people, they unrightfully usurped the power from the rightful Imam Ali. And so I don't really understand some of the things that Tawhidi is saying. To me, it seems like it's very pro-Shia. But in general, if you want to talk about Islamic reform, I think there's definitely, I don't think progressive Muslims are ever going to become mainstream. Like, there's Muslims that say women can lead the prayer, Muslim women can marry non-Muslim men. These are almost like extremists, and the Quranists are almost like extremists in the community. They're seen as extremists, and they're not seen as representative of the Muslim community. But I do think the real reform is going to come from people who don't call themselves reformers. They just call themselves Muslims, and like, for example, Hamza Yusuf. And they are the ones who are going to bring Islam to be more incompatible with the rest of the world.
Very interesting. But if you will accept Hamza Yusuf without using words propaganda, is there a bias maybe within you that you will not accept?
Well, this is what I'm okay. So this is the problem. The problem is when Imam Tawhidi is claiming to be an Islamic reformer, but when he's refusing to speak against the Shia practices, but he's speaking against Sunni Muslims, and he's willing to, like, for example, say things like, I want to put a camera in the Wahhabi, the Sunni mosques, because the terrorists there. But like, I've never heard him speak against Shiism. In the live stream he did with Almin Nawabi on the secular jihadists, and Faisal Saeed al-Muttar. Faisal, who was also an ex-Shia, asked him, what about that thing where they hit the heads, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't want to talk about that. He's like, that's, I don't want to talk about that. That's very sacred to some Muslims, Shia Muslims. It's very important to them. The mourning of Hussein. Like, if you're an Islamic reformer, you better fucking talk about that. That's a horrible practice that the hitting little kids sometimes, right? Now, I'm sure he would agree with that you shouldn't hit little kids. But even adults, like, what the fuck? Like, this is like of course, like I said, going back to what I originally said, Muslims have the right to do that to themselves as long as they don't kill themselves. Just like Catholics whip themselves and whatever. But it's a disgusting practice. And if you're a reformer, you should talk about that, right?
Yeah.
So talk about the mess in your own backyard, as well as not just the mess. Hamza Yusuf doesn't claim to be a reformer. He sees Islam as this is part of Islam. So this is how he interprets it. But if someone's claiming to be a reformer, you got to talk about the shit in your backyard too, right? That's why I have a problem with Tawhidi, and I'd be happy to talk to him about this if he wants to talk to me about this. I mean, that's my perspective about Tawhidi.
Do you see anything positive with what he's doing? Anything of value for? Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
I don't like him.
Okay,
what I've seen with Tawhidi is he's bringing hate towards the Muslim community. He pulls things out of context over and over again. Like, for example, he had this post about halal meat, and he had a picture of some guy's backyard that was cutting meat, and he said, look, this big supermarket chain, they're getting halal meat from this guy's backyard. Look how disgusting that is. Is that what we want? We want halal meat? Like, he's fear-mongering against halal meat. That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen him post. Like, that was some random picture of some guy cutting meat. It was probably after Eid. So whenever, twice a year you have Eid, and one of the Eids, they have what's called Bakra Eid, where they slaughter animals and they share with their neighbors and they give to charity. The guy was probably bought an animal and he was sharing the meat with his neighbors. But the guy was trying to say, Imam Tawhidi was trying to say, this is where halal meat comes from, some guy's backyard. You're telling me a major supermarket chain is getting halal meat from a guy's backyard? How the hell does he do that much? And of course, he was forced to admit after he was called out that this is wrong. Like, Muhammad Syed found the picture on Google Earth or Google Images or something, and they found out it had nothing to do with that. It wasn't even in the same country or something. It was such a ridiculous thing. And then, like, he does this over and over again. Like, he does this over and over again. He tries to fear-monger against Muslims and say things out of context of the truth. I eventually want to have a conversation with him. I want to call him out on these things. He posted about a Palestinian man that was arrested in UK for having sex with a dead person. Okay, this is very disgusting, necrophilia. And he said, look, he's showing his Palestinian values. Like, excuse me, that's a Palestinian value? Having sex with dead people? Like, whoa, like, what the hell are you saying? And one of my friends, Vidu Wids, Walid, he asked him about this in a live chat with him. And he said, why, like, did you say this is Palestinian values? And the guy said, I was just kidding. I was just a joke. I was just sarcasm. Like, how can you say things like that and then, like, laugh it off as sarcasm when it wasn't, like, there was no indication in the post whatsoever that it was sarcasm or it was a joke. But that's what he does. He said, oh, I was just kidding. I was just a joke. Yeah. So I honestly think he's unbalanced in his criticism of Islam, and he's doing a lot of fear mongering, and I don't like it. That's where, and I haven't seen that from you. Like, I think he's very balanced in what you're saying to me, which I'm very happy about. But I don't see that from him. And if you like, when you have him on the show, you can ask him about some of these examples. I'll give you some more examples to ask him about as well. Like, there was this example of this cross and on this Greek island, and again, he made a big post saying that the natives were they didn't want to offend Muslims, so they pulled it down. But the reality was, some people just put up that cross. It wasn't even like an official church or anything, and it was taken down for whatever reason. But it wasn't because they were like placating the Muslims or the Muslims complained or something. No, it was some ridiculous, like, it's, again, like, that's what I find with him over and over again. He misrepresents the situation to try to make Muslims look bad. That's what I think.
I see your point.
Yeah.
I want to ask you here from another Muslim asking you, what do you think about Dawahman? Is he referring to something special?
Dawahman? Oh, you don't know Dawahman. Dawahman
Yeah,
is
he's funny. But
oh, you know him?
I don't know much about him, but he's
Okay, he is a clown. Like, he is a hard line Salafi, like extreme Salafi, what you call extreme Salafi.
Yeah.
To the point that he says the most absurd and ridiculous things, like you can't have sex like with the woman on top because it makes you gay. And I don't know where he's coming up with these like crazy things he's saying. He's a young guy. He basically made a video about me, mocking me, saying I left Islam for an atheist girlfriend, which was totally wrong because I'm still with the same wife I always was since she was Muslim until now. And I don't know what the hell's wrong with him. He's a clown. Like, I think even Muslims laugh at him because the things he says is so funny. But he's like basically a hardline Salafi. That's what he is. A young guy that's misguided and self-deluded, basically.
Yeah. Maybe that would be the last question I have for you. I respect boundaries, as I earlier. I don't know how to ask this question, but maybe I'll just mention the topic and then you say whatever you want to say, and I won't ask any follow-up question. But okay, so you and your wife, you were both Muslims, and then I've seen that you've been public about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people are wondering something about this. Whatever you want to share. Is it difficult, maybe?
I think when the time comes, she will speak about what she believes, but she prefers not to, and she specifically asked me not to talk about her. So what I can say is that, like, she's not the same person she was, obviously, when she was, like, when we first got married as Muslims, right? Things have changed a lot, and I'm very happy with the direction that my family is going in general, and my kids are pretty much like doing whatever they want. There's no Sharia law implemented on them. Like, even you know, we joke about when my son's gonna have a girlfriend, we don't have problems with that. You know, so, like, you know, we're taking things in stride, and I think that we had a very good journey together, and I hope that it continues in the same positive direction.
Yeah, thank you for being good sport about it. I guess if I can just say one last thing is censorship. Is it getting better or getting worse? What do you think?
So I think that's a big problem. That's a big problem for someone like me, because, like, I'm even scared to talk to you because, like, your video, like, you were blocked from YouTube, like, you were taken off YouTube, and I think that's very unfortunate because, like, how could you have conversations if you're censoring people like that, right? Like, I was blocked on Facebook twice for 30 days at a time. Before that, also 5 days, 7 days, whatever, 3 days, right? But 2 30-day bans, and you know me, like, I'm pretty damn reasonable, right? And actually, what happened was I was, like, targeted. It wasn't even like what I was saying was bad, but it was used against me in an inappropriate way. I know the apostate prophet was taken off Twitter. He was blocked, permanently banned from Twitter. I do fear that, like, one day I will be kicked off. I know that the Masked Arab, his YouTube channel was taken down, but then it came back up. I don't know, man. Like, I might get banned from like, so far Twitter is a little bit better, and I haven't been banned or blocked or anything, but I fear that it is going to happen there too. And then I fear that I'm also going to get banned from YouTube. All of these channels, one by one, I feel like even someone that's reasonable, like, it's very scary. Like, you don't know, like, you self censor yourself because you don't even know, like, am I going to say something that's going to get me banned, right? And so, yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, I don't know what to say. I regret it deeply. I do think that whether you're on the left or you're on the right, everyone should have the right to talk, to speak. And because I don't think that banning people is going to help the situation in any way whatsoever. Like, we need to have these conversations. And I think the more you ban people, the more you're going to find extremists on both sides. Because what happens is you push out the moderates, and then extremists will come up, right? And even more, and they're not going to talk on YouTube. They'll have their own platforms or whatever, right? So I just think it's unfortunate. And I hope that I don't know how we're going to change that. Like, these companies are very left-leaning, right? YouTube and Twitter and all of these tech companies are very left-leaning, and I'm lucky I still have my job, because I could have got like kicked out of the job too after what
Yeah.
some of the things I'm saying. I'm not even being a bigot. Like,
You
I'm
are
defending,
very, very fair, very balanced.
and yet, like, I'm still at risk of, like, it's so ridiculous. Like, it's like, I don't know what to say, but like you said, but I do appreciate you having me on here. I think the conversation went really well. I'd like to also upload it to my channel as well, so it gets a little bit more views.
Please do.
And let's have another conversation again. Honestly, this was good. Let's talk about, I think next time what we can do is organize like the specific points. For example, if you have like a pure form poll you want to talk about, and then I can actually research it a bit more, and we can talk about it a little bit more detail, because I felt like I wasn't prepared about some of those things, and I didn't really know what to say, and it's kind of hard to look it up while you're chatting. So
yeah. And sorry for misusing the word taqiyya in the middle of the sentence. That was inappropriate. I didn't mean to you. It was more like, this is me.
When did you misuse?
When I was doing peer research, I was like, oh, I'm actually taqiyya. So I was referring to myself.
Oh, no.
I wasn't referring to you at all.
Oh, no. I didn't take it in that way whatsoever. I think at this point, honestly, like, we still didn't really talk about like like me being a little bit more honest or being more blunt. That was supposed to be the topic.
Yeah. We touched on it.
Okay.
I think I still got a lot of things that I wanted.
Okay.
Especially your take on it. A lot of these things we discuss, there's a lot of wisdom that comes from you. So I feel that I've gained a lot from this. And one of my favorite videos that I've seen with you is the apostasy tsunami.
Yes.
Great commentary. That calmed down my soul a bit. That people are actually, maybe it's on the surface, they're pushing these slogans: Islam is the fastest growing religion, your grandchildren will be Muslims, your children will be Muslims, and then inside the mosque they're having these conversations. But I'm not going to take too much of your time.
I'll just end with that as well. I'll just add a little bit more to that. That is exactly what is happening in the Muslim community. I think it's unfortunate that, by the way, I spoke to the guy who Bilal Phillips was talking about in that video, the young Somali man that his family took him to speak to Bilal Phillips. And I know so many people like that. So many people. A lot of them still call themselves Muslims because, unfortunately, there's just too much risk to the life, not to them being killed, but there's too much. It'll be too unsettling to them to tell their family they're not Muslim. Either the wife will leave them, the parents will, have a breakdown. One guy I know, he's in his 40s and he doesn't want to tell his parents because they're in the 70s and 80s, and he doesn't want them to have like a heart attack or something. So I think it's just, we're not quite there yet that people can come out, but there's so many ex-Muslims, it's not even funny, So like let's end on that positive note that many people you don't actually know the ex-Muslim, they're actually ex-Muslim. And I think even some of these scholars, these Muslim imams, I think some of them are ex-Muslim, but they obviously have too much to lose.
All right, but I posted your YouTube channel.
Thank you.
Please subscribe to Abdullah Samir. Great nuanced conversation, and thank you for not holding back on some of these taboo questions.
No problem.
Yeah. So we wrap it up in 3, 2, 1.